Dunya, can you hear me? Good. All right, thank you. We will call the Board of Adjustment meeting of November 15, 2018. It is not on our usual day. This is Thursday rather than Wednesday. We'll call it to order. I think it's 6:44. And we will start with roll call.
Good evening. Board Member Holly Cohen.
Here.
Board Member Michael McDermott. Board Member Mary Irvin. Board Member Cassandra Theramine.
Here, for the record, should be Arnold.
Cassandra Arnold.
Just for, yeah. But I'm here.
Board Member Laura Hill.
Present.
Chair Rosaline Philippe.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you so much. And with that being said, we'll go quickly with Pledge of Allegiance. And Ms. Cohen, would you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please remain standing. A brief minute of silence because we have our brothers and sisters in California going through quite a bit, and we know we've more than 50 lives have been lost. So we'll keep them in our prayers tonight. Thank you. All right. Uh, any changes? Any amendments to the agenda?
There's no amendments to the, there's no amendments to the agenda,
Okay.
Madam Chair. I would state, though, okay, we haven't got to that point yet.
Oh, all right. Would you go ahead then and make the announcement to the audience?
Okay, I'll
You'll go
wanna
ahead.
do that. So this is the quasi-judicial announcement. These items may either be approved, denied, or approved with conditions. They are public hearings. Please be advised that the following item on the agenda is quasi-judicial in nature. The applicant or duly authorized agent for the applicant must be present. If no representative is present, the application will be tabled to the next Board of Adjustment meeting. When the petition is announced, the applicant or his or her agent shall approach the microphone and state his or her name and address for the record. Any interested party wishing to speak on any item may approach the podium after the board has opened the public hearing. Each party shall approach the microphone and state his or her name and address for the record, and shall address his or her comments to the board. Each party shall speak for not more than 3 minutes in order to provide for order and time for other interested parties to address their concerns or comments to the board.
Thank you. And now you may.
Well-
The quasi-judicial oath? I'm sorry.
I guess I'll do that too. If anybody present intends to speak to the board, please stand and raise your right hand, including staff. Do you swear to tell the truth and the whole truth and nothing but the truth in this proceeding?
I do.
Thank you.
So we do not have minutes for the evening, Mr. Chair. Ms. Chair, I have to provide those for the next meeting for review.
Because we were just noticing. And I see that it says continued petition none, but actually this is a continued item? Yes, no?
It was to a date certain, yes,
Okay.
ma'am, and it's the only item on the agenda, so I placed it as the item on the
Okay.
agenda.
All right. Okay, with one item, let's go. V-01-18, special exception for funeral home 13455 West Dixie Highway. And you go ahead, make the presentation.
Good evening, Mr. board members, thank you for your time. Thank you for coming out this evening on this special one, because there's a change from the original meeting date of the 21st to the 15th to accommodate the holiday, and we thank you for coming in this evening. As was stated, this is a special exception to allow for a funeral home at the address of 13455 West Dixie Highway. This item was seen before the board at its last meeting of August the 15th. And at that time, it was continued on a date certain. And as it's mentioned, that date certain was on November the 21st. We had to change that date because of accommodation for the holidays and not being able to acquire quorum. So we are here this evening. This special exception use is pursuant to Article 4 of the Division 2, Section 4-202 of the Land Development Regulations to allow for a proposed funeral home at the property located at 13455 West Dixie Highway in the C1 district. The said special exception to be reviewed and under criteria set forth in Article 3, Division 5, Section 3-504 of the LDRs. As further on, just to give more clarification to this, this is pursuant to Article 4, Division 2 of Section 4-202 of the Land Development Regulations, the LDRs. The funeral home may be permitted within the C1 district, which is a commercial district, and with special exception approval by the Board of Adjustment. As such, the applicant has filed this special exception use request to the BOA in order to bring above described service to the city. As stated briefly, is the history with this item is that it was heard on August the 15th of 2018, the special exception to allow for the funeral home. And there were several items that were addressed during an extensive discussion at that time. The board voted 4-1 to continue the item to the date certain of November the 21st. The applicant was also directed to do an outreach with the Dixie Terrace condominium through the Homeowners Association and provide a parking plan that will prevent parking overflow into the neighboring businesses and neighborhoods. As you can see, this is an aerial of the site. As you have to your west, you have West Dixie. To your north, you have 135th Street. And then you have this alleyway to the east of the property that abuts the Dixie Terrace condominiums and the subject site. Here's another aerial looking from the west side of the overview of the area along along West Dixie Highway. Here is another overview. I put this in. This is specific to the condominium that is to the east of the property. And as you can see, there is a street that separates the site and the condominium. And as you can see, it's a cul-de-sac, and you have several vehicles that are parking in that area. This picture is off of 135th Street, and this is the indication of the condominium, and this is where they enter and exit the property. The overview of the request, again, is pertaining to Article 3, Division 5 of Section 3-504 of the city's LDRs to provide authority to the BOA to hear and grant or deny applications for special exception. In evaluating the application for such request, the BOA shall find that the application demonstrate compliance with the following standards. Standard number 1. Is the use a listed special exception is the use a listed special exception in the district where the property is located. The property is located within the C1 commercial district, and to allow for the use, it will require a special exception. Is there appropriate provision of access to the facility adequate for the estimated traffic from public streets and sidewalks so as to ensure the public safety and avoid traffic congestion? Yes, with a caveat. There is a full frontal access to the existing development along West Dixie and Northwest 134th Street. The existing space has been suitable for two-way circulation. Analysis. Are there adequate parking areas and off-street truck loading spaces for the anticipated number of occupants, employees, patrons, and layout of the parking is convenient and conducive for safe operation? So at our last meeting, this was a notable discussion, was specific to this. Is this site adequate, has adequate parking? As we discussed, based on the code, they are providing adequate parking for the site. Matter of fact, they are exceeding that. But a concern that was presented at the last meeting is the potential of overflow from the use that is taking place there. And what mitigating factors will the applicant employ to address that overflow potential? So what you see here, you have the site plan that was presented to the board on August the 15th. And we have the proposed site plan for this evening. And there have been deviations to the plan slightly to increase the number of parking spaces from the original site plan that was submitted to the board. And so you have more parking and that could service the public that use the facility. That said, when our consultant reviewed the site plan, the consultant did point out several concerns with the site plan as it was presented. And the consultant said, as a note, one of the spaces 5 is not an adequate space. Space 5, if you would say, is kind of to the north of the site, kind of corner right beside the building there. It's a parallel parking space. Also said the consultant had concerns with the circulation within the site specific to backup of parking into the drive aisle. Said that the handicap space seems to be inadequate based on its backup toward the site. Would you look at it from off of the street that we have, this is 134th Street. So these are items that the consultant brought out that says that the site plan, as it is presented, may have some issues with the circulation, with backup, which you have a standard that you need to meet. Also, that was stated in the analysis by staff is that you have a non-conforming situation with the site. As it is in the code requires that you have a minimum of 25 feet set back from the curb before you apply your first parking space. Now, this is an existing non-conforming site that already did not meet that criteria if you look along the north side of the parking lot, and some parking spaces in the front along West Dixie. I bring this up because the applicant added more parking spaces to try to accommodate the use that is exceeding the number that was required, but in doing so, it exacerbated the nonconformity of the site in that they did not meet the 25 feet setback requirement. With that, I also indicated that you needed a variance to be able to accommodate this as a means to be able to do so. You can look at it also in this mindset. They are trying to address the need of the site, even though it is contributing to the nonconformity. It's not a nonconformity to the extent that is out of proportion with what is already there within the site. So I wouldn't say it's egregious in what they are doing with the with introducing those extra parking spaces, but it's still, what that says, is a nonconformity, and it is increasing it. Is there suitable landscaping and fencing along the lot and rear of the lot lines? They did provide a landscape plan. As you saw in the last site, and I'll go back to it, they're showing the landscape as you see along 134th Street, along West Dixie Highway, things to that effect, which meets the minimum standards that is required for it. And right now, they have hardly any landscape on the site, so they are even increasing the landscape that is on the site with this plan. Is the proposed special exception reasonable in terms of logical, efficient, and the economical extension of public services and facilities such as public water, sewer, police, and fire protection and transportation? Yes. All basic public service such as public water, sewer, police, and fire protection are readily available and currently serving the property. Will the proposed special exception constitute an appropriate use in the area and will not substantially injure or detract from the use of the surrounding property or from the character of the neighborhood? We say yes. The funeral home, in this capacity, the C1 allows for the use there. It is a use that requires scrutiny through the special exception process, which is why we are here today. But at the core, you can say because it is C1 and we allow it through the special exception, that it is something that is allowed. Generally suited for the location, as it states in the analysis for the C1 district, such uses may be permitted on a case-by-case basis after review, as I stated, through the special exception process and based on any conditions that the BOA may deem reasonable for the site. So in that aspect, yes. You have the requested special exception is clearly constitutes an appropriate use for the commercial section of the city and subject to assurance that all spillover parking is not on the side streets or swales in there. And this is something that we discussed at the last meeting. Is the overflowing parking, and will it be in the street, will it be on swales and stuff like that? I believe when the applicant comes up, they're gonna address that very issue right there and what plans they're gonna implement to try to to prevent that from happening when they're doing their services. Right. No open code violations on the site at all. So in conclusion, as noted previously, the funeral home in the commercial office land use district is an allowable use. The use meets the standards outlined in the land development regulations, is an appropriate use for the area involved, and will not be detriment to the public welfare. In the light of these findings, staff recommends the BOA approve the request for the special exception use to establish the proposed funeral home on the site, subject site property, subject to the following conditions. 1, that a certificate of use and a business tax receipt is obtained. 2, that prior to the issuance of any building permit, the applicant to revise the site plan parking that includes closing one of the 3 remaining ingress and egress of the property and redesign the parking stalls that conflict with the circulation and are inaccessible and subject to the Community Planning and Development Department as proof. 3, it is recommended that the parking agreement with the adjacent commercial property owner for the supplemental parking during peak parking periods be maintained, and any change to the agreement will be required approval from the Community Planning and Development Department. 4, the applicant can clearly post no parking signs along the frontage area of the adjacent residential community, Dixie Terrace condominium, and swale areas of the subject property. And 5, a Miami-Dade County permit for the use of embalming chemicals on site or a letter from the county that no permits are required shall be submitted to the Community Planning and Development Department before the issuance of a certificate of occupancy.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. All right.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I think that based upon a discussion that Mr. Cook and I had earlier, that there should be an additional condition 6 that any variances that are noted on the site plan would have to be approved and I'm not sure what the deadline should be. It's certainly before issuance of a building permit. What is the next step in the process? Is it design, what's it called?
So if we require them to get a variance for the setback, so they have 2 that may be available. I would believe what would be required, depending on the nature of it. We have an administrative variance that allows for a 20% deviation from the code. I would have to look and see if what they're doing falls in that category. Then it could be internal to it. But if it's exceeding that, then it would be an it would be a zoning variance that would need to come back before BOA before we could proceed forward. And
Okay, so it's either before a DRC review or definitely before building permit. And we can clarify that condition at an appropriate stage in these proceedings.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant here?
yes.
Okay, you may come up.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Joseph I. Pierre for Reflection Funeral Home located at 13455 West Dixie Highway. I was here the August 15. There was some requirement for parking. The issue was the parking. Then I did a lot of effort, myself and the engineer. Then we have 20 parking now. I believe we didn't have any other issue. I don't know if somebody will bring some now, but that's the problem we have now. So I understand that I have to go with the city of Miami to do what I have to do, apply for certificate of use and the permit for the works that I have to do in the buildings. And that's the requirement, and I have to do that. I believe.
Is that it? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Madam Chair, may I think it's important because I made a statement to this fact while I was doing my presentation that the applicant did provide to staff signage that they would be posting on the site saying no parking in the right-of-way or on the swales. And that was one of the important aspects that you spoke of at the last meeting that they needed to address, especially with the community said they had concerns with parking overflow.
Thank you.
And additionally, the applicant stated that they would have parking attendants too in assisting with the parking during services.
All right. Thank you. Now, I will open public hearing. Anyone for or against this item? This is your time to come up.
One second.
Please state your name and address.
Just a 2?
2
Ready?
I don't know, 2 minutes.
Two. It's two.
We should change this statement then.
Okay, I'll do it on my phone.
Ready?
No?
I'm getting older here.
Please.
Go ahead, sir.
My name is Howard Albert. I'm the owner of, one of the owners of Audio Vision Recording Studios. Yeah, it's on. 13385 West Dixie Highway. The owner came to me, I guess when they first bought the building and asked if they could use our parking lot for overflow. And at the time, I said, I'll be a good neighbor, and I said, fine. But the more we thought about it, and my two partners, we said, that's not going to work. So we also have a gate. We're going to start closing that gate, so there isn't going to be any way for them to use our parking spaces. I can tell you we've been there since 1987, and even when the cleaners was at this property across the street, there were people parking on the swales, and they didn't have that much traffic. There's not that much parking that you can actually put on their property. So I do think that's going to be a huge problem, unless they park across the street at the bank. And then you got a cross the street problem, and I don't know what's going to happen there. But I don't think it's, and then we also have, I've been told, numerous funeral homes in a 3.5 mile area. I don't think we need another funeral home. That's all I have to say.
Good evening, everyone. Angel Troche Lopez, 13325 Northeast 10th Avenue, North Miami. If I can share some documentation with you. I still I see that we're concentrating a lot on the parking issue. I still have issues with the impact to my home property value. And I wanted to point to some of the articles that we have checked, and these are publications that are real estate mainly. And I highlighted the areas for your convenience. But if we refer to this first document, it's for Realtor.com. And it lists neighbors that can drag your home value. And in that article, in page 3 and 4, you will see a graph that the potential impact is at 6.5% of the homeowner's property. Housely is another communication and real estate. If you go to page number 2, item number 5, it indicates that the potential drop coincides with Realtor.com at 6.5%. An article from The Street lists them as part of the 7 neighbors that can hurt your home. Last but not least, we have also from the appraisals insurance, and it mentions also that funeral homes, they do have a negative impact to your homeowner's property value. Please, board, please consider, I have a 10-year-old, I want to leave legacy for him, and part of that is based on the real estate value. Don't do this to us. Thank you.
Good evening.
You need to be sworn in.
Okay.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this proceeding?
Yes, sir. My name's Carlson Daniel. I own a building, couple buildings in North Miami. I'm hearing this, and I just don't understand. It seems as if I thought businesses were good for communities, and they brought tax revenue to the city, and they do a whole host of other things, including some of the things that they do for teams and, you know, young kids and stuff like that. I just can't understand that. It seems that this business is not an American business. It's another type of business, so that it may hurt others, but it's also hurting him not to be able to do a business in the United States. How do we tell him if he does the things that are necessary, parking, signs on the swales, and whatever, a whole host of other things. I'm also a general contractor, so I know he's got a whole host of things to go through in order to be able to open this funeral home at some point. But he should have a right to do that, and people also have a right to say that it bothers their home values and stuff like that. But unless you're going to sell tomorrow, I don't see how that affects your home value. And if you are going to sell tomorrow, give me a call. I'm also a realtor. But I understand you live there, and it's not a joke, and I'm not trying to make light of it, but we're losing sight of his rights as a United States citizen to open a business where he wants to open it if it abides by the laws and codes of the city to which he wants to open it. I'm just sitting here listening, and it just doesn't seem like his rights are being looked at all. It's only about other things. I mean, okay, parking. You were going to allow him to park in your spot, in your area. Okay, if I owned the business next to his, I would allow him to park if I wasn't using it on those times that people do funerals, which are generally off times. If you're open on Saturdays, I guess okay, but if you're not, then it probably doesn't affect you. I just wanted to be mindful of his rights as a business owner, as I am a business owner. If somebody told me, well, you can't own this business or you can't own this building because of, you know, you have enough parking, but we want you to have more parking because when we started our business, it was okay. It was the good old boys club. Now it's not a good old boys club. We want to make these rules and regulations about everybody's rights, but not the rights of the people that are trying to open a business to better the city. I'm sorry I
Okay.
took so much time.
Thank you. 7 seconds left.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Machado. I live at 13355 Northeast 10 Avenue, kitty corner of the proposed funeral home.
Can you speak up a little, please?
Yes, sir. I live a kitty corner to the proposed funeral home. And I understand, that we have rights, but businesses are not people, and our rights are not absolute. They are balanced against the rights of everyone else. There are 10 funeral homes within 3.5 miles, circular miles of my home. 10. Okay? We don't need an 11th funeral home with compounded parking problems. And let's also think about the intent and why you guys serve on this board. You guys serve to plan out our communities, and what your intent, or your predecessor's intent, was to build an arts and design district, okay? And a funeral home, an additional funeral home within half a mile of a second funeral home on the same stretch of street is not promoting arts and design, okay? If you allow this funeral home to open there, it will be across the street of a second one. And despite the additional beautiful landscaping that he may do, it's also the welcome to that part of the city, because right in front, right in that corner, is the Welcome to North Miami sign. And you know what's going to be right behind it for all those people who drive up to that intersection? Right behind that Welcome to North Miami sign? A funeral home. And right behind that funeral home, I live. I chose North Miami because it attracted the poor, poor poet that I am. I am the artist, okay, that you intended to attract into this neighborhood, and it worked. Let's live up to that intent. We don't need an 11th funeral home. For all his rights, he can find a better spot. There's too many of them already. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm
Can you-
Consuelo
Good.
Vargas.
Can you please speak up? We can't, the volume is very low.
Okay. I'm Consuelo Vargas, and I've been living in Dixie Terrace for many years. And my apartment, the front of my apartment, the balcony is right in front of the funeral home. I don't think that anybody would like to sit in your balcony, refreshing yourself, just to look at a funeral home. And like he said, that he built up for 20 parking. 20 parking is not enough for a funeral home. When someone dies and has a big family, and family that can wait for a couple weeks, or the person who is dead, there is going to be the crowd of that funeral home. I would not agree to have a funeral home facing my house. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Maya Bolivar. I'm from Dixie Terrace Condo Association. I'm from the board. The address is 13455 Northeastern Avenue. We just have a meeting with all owners. We don't agree with the funeral home close to us. We have a lot of problem with the parking, and we don't have overflow parking when they have funeral. So he mentioned he wanted doing 20 space. Still 20 space is not enough. I don't know how they want to make it 20 when the space is only for 13. So the city mentioned the code is only at least 25 parking. How come they want to give it a session to him and to do it with 13 or 20 space? I went last week to spoke with the Bank America, because the last time he said he already spoke with the bank, and the manager, they want to give it a space to parking. The manager spoke to him. He said, how come I want to give it my space to put it out my customer to give it to the funeral. So I want to please the board think about that, because I don't want in the future, if you approve the funeral, I'll be in the city every day behind you guys complain about what you approve. I'm very next to him, so I don't want my place be dirty, make a lot of noise. I don't want a problem. We want a quiet place the way it is right now. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Mary Tangway. I live at 13295 West Dixie Highway. My concern is not that he cannot have a business there. My concern is that the traffic jams of all of this that's going to be happening, because I have a funeral home across the street from me. I have Oasis Church behind me. And the other day when they had a funeral, they had the horse and buggy. They held up traffic for 45 minutes with this horse and buggy and all the other traffic. And there was 2 funerals going on at the same time, from Oasis and from the Trinity in front of me. My customers could not even come to my shop. They were calling, Mary, we can't even get there because there's the funeral there. I mean, 45 minutes of holding up traffic, and what we're going to be dealing with 135th Street with this year. Suppose they all 3 have one at one time. What is going to happen at that point? You know, I don't object anybody from opening up business, but we got to consider that having this right there congestive area with 135th and West Dixie Highway, which is supposed to be beautification, we're going to be having funerals there all the time. I mean, I'm not against anybody having business, because I've been there for 30 years, and you know, I don't object to that. I just object to the congestion and what's going to be happening in that area. So that's all I can say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Anel Simons. I heard all the concerns that everyone has as far as their property value.
Name and address, please.
Oh, Anel Simons, 13455 West Dixie Highway, Reflections Funeral Home. We've waited over a year to get this done. Everything that was asked of us, we did. We continuously to do. It has cost us a fortune, or what we think is a fortune, to get everything together. We own our building. We're not renting. We're not leasing. We own our building. So now I'm just baffled as to, I hear their concerns. I heard real estate. I'm actually also a realtor, concerns. I don't even want, that is not even, I don't even want to touch that. But nevertheless, it's not so much that we have a right. Like the poet came here because of the art district, we were welcomed into the city. They're like, okay, it's good for business. It's good. This is what I was hearing. I was like, okay, And that street, along that street, that is a street that, like they said, have a lot of funeral homes or whatever, but that's the street that leads to the cemetery, one of the major cemeteries. It's a business. Funerals are not held every day. They don't take up all of this time that they're, and we have one of the biggest lots compared to most businesses on that street. And I'm pretty sure you guys already know that. So I'm just baffled as to, why, they're bringing up these little things to hinder something. We've been paying our taxes. We've been paying water every month. And we're not operational. We've had to do other things to stay operational, and we've kept up. That's all I'm saying. Okay, so I think we should have our right to have our funeral home there, as we have, stayed on, and did everything they request.
Good evening. My name is Juan Romero. I'm traffic engineer for the funeral home.
Address still.
790 Northwest 107th Avenue, Caltron Engineering Group. I'm the traffic engineer for it. And if I exceed my limit, please, I'm just going to also try to explain to them what we did. also to try to come up with a parking generation. And all this was based on statistics. Now, based on the size of the building that Reflections is proposing, we went ahead and we collected data at different adjacent funeral homes. Since the size of this one, it is small compared to the existing ones and the other one, the normal ones in the U.S. This is based on the IT. It's called the Institute of Transportation Engineers. Now, based on our analysis, which somebody mentioned, I don't remember, funerals are not performed during peak hours of the adjacent street. Let's say adjacent is 8 o'clock up until 10, and also 4 to 6. Everybody's coming back, everybody goes to work. Now, based on a forecast that we did, a total of 17 vehicles will come out into a service during the midday. That will be 10 vehicles coming in and 7 coming out. Now, for the afternoon, 5 are coming in and 8 are coming out. And this is forecast, of course, is not an exact science, but based on all the statistics that we did, data collection that we went ahead and we performed at adjacent ones, and also using the trip generation analysis. And in addition to that, based on the City of North Miami regulations for parking analysis, is supposed to be 1 parking space for each 100 square feet of chapel. Now, that will absolutely yield a total of 14 spaces as required. And based on the site plan, you have 19 spaces if we don't take into consideration one of the comments that you went ahead and you showed, which is not available to back up. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. You see, I'm not used to this. I was getting ready to say fire. Sorry. Anyone else? Okay, with that being said, we'll close public hearing, and
Madam Chair?
yes,
There's
Mr. Attorney.
two pieces of information that I think are important for you to know.
Okay.
For you to deliberate. The first one is, what's the standard that you should use in evaluating comments from citizens? And the standard that the cases suggest are in a case called Miami-Dade County versus Wahlberg, decided by the 3rd District Court of Appeal. And it says, under the correct legal standards, citizen testimony in the zoning matter is perfectly permissible and constitutes substantial competent evidence, which is the standard that you must follow, as long as it is fact-based. So mere generalized statements of opposition are to be disregarded, but fact-based testimony is not. The second piece of information I think you should know, and we can discuss who provides it, I have it in front of me, is what other uses are permitted in this zoning district that could go on this property in addition to a funeral home? Because that sort of defines the character of what is possible on this site. And this is a C1 district, and under the existing code, there are things, and I'll start at the top of the list. Adult daycare, child care center, hotels, motels, and lodging, live-work studio, nursing convalescent homes, residential multifamily, community center, cultural, civic center, convention center, educational, private, including charter, educational public, educational technical, government facilities, critical facilities, hospital. Some of these are permitted uses, some of these would require a special exception. So a permitted use would just be they go in for whatever site plan review or design review they need. They don't even come to you for approval.
Right.
The list continues, just so you know, public safety facility, auto service station, car wash mechanical, parking garage, vehicle parts new, vehicle rental, vehicle sales display, major and minor, vehicle service, major and minor, health fitness club, recreation indoor. Okay, then we get into bar lounge, permitted use, not special exception. Catering service, nightclub cabaret as a special exception, restaurants as a permitted use, brew pub as a permitted use. Banquet hall, funeral homes as we're here. Religious institution as a permitted use. Theater, movie, performing arts as a permitted use. Museum, permitted use. Convenience store, drugstore, pharmacy, food special store, grocery store, all as permitted uses. Retail, wholesale department store, retail general single use, retail home improvement, secondhand consignment store, all as permitted uses. Then there's a whole category of office type uses, including medical clinic as a permitted use, business, sales, professional office, animal grooming as a permitted use, animal hospital, animal kennel, boarding, diagnostic lab, copy printing service. The list goes on and on. You may have heard enough. I can keep going if you want.
No, we're good. Okay, board discussion? Ms. Hill?
Well, thank you. I have a lot of concerns about this this business in this location, and of course, the parking has been my biggest one of my biggest concerns about this. Specifically, wasn't that pleased to see that the additional parking spaces that have been located since our last meeting, a number of those are actually not very effectively planned. I thank you for making adjustments and giving it some conscious thought about how you can conform. However, I was also disappointed to see that the applicant did not make a deal with another business to lease their parking or share parking. It said that in, let's see, page 3 of the document. Let's just cut to the chase. There's not going to be a time where you're going to be able to use the Bank of America parking. It's just not, doesn't seem viable to me. I feel strongly that when parking is not accounted for, what we end up with is a bunch of cars on the side streets, which impacts the swales, which causes drainage problem all over North Miami, and that's one of the reasons why we initiate these quotas for parking spots, and it's really an important aspect to consider a project like this. The second part that I can't quite get over is the oversaturation of the same type of business in a close proximity to another. It is the Arts and Overlay District. We are trying to promote a certain path going forward in this area. And it is the job of the board and the city council and city government to guide what kind of development that we want in certain areas of our city. And I just really don't feel like this particular project meets the goals in our city to bring arts and that type of thing to this area. In fact, I think it's counter to the downtown development plan and the Arts and Overlay District to keep adding the same business that doesn't really cater to that crowd that we're trying to attract. So for those reasons, I don't think between the last meeting and this meeting those have been overcome. So I have a lot of concerns about this project in this place.
Mr. McDermott first, and then
Okay.
Ms.
Yes,
Corn.
I have a lot of problems with this. Can you hear me? As I said, I have a lot of problems with this on a lot of different bases. I understand the devaluation of surrounding properties for funeral homes, number one. Number two, there's a terrible proliferation of these same facilities on the same road that's supposed to be part of the Arts and Overlay District. This is not the kind of business that we were anticipating when we created the Arts and Overlay District. Now, we understand, as a gentleman mentioned, people should be able to open up a business, but they just can't, freedom has its limitations. And you can open up a business if the business suits the nature and character of the neighborhood. And if it suits the, what the intent is of the zoning, and certainly that what I think was not the intent when they created an arts and overlay district there. So, as I say, there's many that I have objections to. I went by the cul-de-sac area there on 10th Avenue on Saturday and Sunday. The place was full of cars. There's no overflow available, period, okay? So if you look, and again, these were the times of day that I anticipated would be days that funerals would be held. So I went there on Saturday and Sunday. The cul-de-sac next to the condominium was full. The side street was lined up with cars. So the only places they have is the 20 places they have on their site. And this is an incredibly small building. This is only 3,000 some odd square feet. They're going to have 3 chapels in that small building.
That was.
Well,
that was rejected,
Yeah.
corrected at the last meeting.
okay. So, but in any case, according to their, what they have submitted, they're going to have 100 seats, 101 seats in this facility with 20 parking spaces, okay? So how do you fit 101 people in a 20 space facility when you can't park across the street? Besides, you don't want people parking across the street because of the traffic issues. And you can't park next door, which they told us they could last time. Now we know they can't park next door. They can't use the cul-de-sac, so they're pretty well landlocked into what, into what they have. And lastly, I went up to a funeral home, a large funeral home up in West Dixie Highway, and I talked to the gentleman there and asked him about the size of funerals. I said, what is your usual size of funerals? And he said, well, they can vary, but they're usually pretty large. I said, well, how large? Well, we maybe have a small funeral, maybe 20, 30 people. That's small, okay? So you're going to have, you're already maxing out the number of car spaces you have available, plus the fact when you move out of, and they have that problem on 151st Street. When they are on the corner of 151st Street, and they say they basically lock down 151st Street when they have a funeral, when they're getting the cars out and everything else, they're stopping the traffic. Can you imagine what's going to happen on 135th? I mean, we have horrible traffic there as it is. Nobody can move there as it is. And now you're going to lock down on the weekends a heavily traveled major state highway, state road? I don't know. I just don't see where there's any real positives to this. I'm sure they're wonderful people and they will probably operate a wonderful business, but I just think it's the wrong location for a lot of reasons.
Thank you. Ms.
Well,
Goins?
I'm going to piggyback on what both of you said because my biggest concern. You can't hear me. Okay. I'm going to piggyback on what my 2 councilmen just said, or board members. You have 110 seats in this auditorium, and you're hoping to fill them. And once again, you do not have parking. And it is a cul-de-sac that ends. So people are going to have to come in, can't find a parking space, turn around and have to look elsewhere. And it's a danger for the residents in that neighborhood. Also, it is an arts and entertainment district. And the arts and entertainment district basically starts there. And I just pulled up, I guess I Googled it, and I asked for funeral homes in the area, and I got 7 within, to me, walking distance. We don't want a city in which the only reason people come is because they're dying to get in. I mean, this is not what we're trying to do here. On top of that, everyone does have a right to run a business, but businesses are regulated. And after listening to the list of items that are allowed there without even a special exception, I think you're going to make your money back and make it good. But you knew what was going on. You knew that you had to go for a special exception, and I just, you know, can't figure why we need an 8th, you know, funeral home in a what is it, 10-block radius? That's all I've got to say.
Madam Chair. I
Mr.
just wanted to
Attorney?
clarify that the reason that I had identified these other uses was to show that there were other uses that might have a more significant impact on the neighborhood than this use. Not that there were alternatives for this owner.
We go there
Got it.
with that at that time.
Ms. Arnold?
No discussion.
No discussion? Okay, I have a few questions. We keep referring to maybe the applicant, funeral home, but there are different types of activities that goes on in a funeral home. So will you be, Mr. Pierre, or maybe the young lady, will you be having the actual services, or will this be a place for viewing?
Actually, we're not gonna do the service there. The service is gonna be done at the church. But we're gonna use as the viewing, mostly on Saturday. But we have a funeral home before. It was smaller than this one. I mean, it's bigger than this one, but we didn't have too many people. Also, I'm gonna provide a van to carry the family. So, meaning that not everyone gonna come with cars.
The immediate family, okay. Another question. In your change or attempt to get additional parking space, I know one of my suggestions was to make sure that we close off the entry from 10th Avenue. Is that how, maybe you're a parking person, is that how you obtain the additional parking?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that means by right, the piece of swale or whatever cement is along your property belongs to you,
Yes.
for your clients?
Yeah.
Okay. That's okay,
Yes,
thank you.
something to say.
I got you. I had a lot of concerns last time, and just like you, Mr. McDermott, I did sit. I went out there a couple of times to see, and I think it's really disrespectful when people come and they have concern, they have complaints, and they are the ones who are breaking or being the individual creating the issue. Because I see the folks from the building, they're the one in the parking lot of that business right now.
Yes,
That's okay. I don't need an answer. I just stating what my observation has been. That's one. I remember when I started on this board, there was a nice, sweet little old lady who worked in a school or is part of an owner of a school. And there was another applicant opening up a school probably feet away from theirs. And she came in, and her concern was, well, I already have a school. And I remember the attorney at the time had stated that we are still in a capitalistic country, and people have the right to open up whatever kind of business wherever for as long as it meets regulations. I hear your concerns. I hear about the fact that funeral homes, you don't want to look at it, you don't want to this, you don't want to that. I get that. Maybe I'm not in that situation, but it's still part of life. You either have a hospital, a funeral home, a school, something's gonna go there. It's gonna be a business no matter what, because it's right on 135th. Yes, we have residential, and that's what it is. Unless we decide that we're not gonna build homes, not until 100 feet or 200 feet away from a business line. That's not gonna happen. There's another funeral home that we approved a few years back
which is up the street on West Dixie. We did limit, and that was placed in our approval, that whenever they have, if it is a large event, or if they have a service that will require a large number of people, that they do not hold it there. And
right.
they agreed that this would be held at the church rather than on site. Is
Absolutely.
that something that you can agree to?
Absolutely. That's exactly what we're gonna do. We're not gonna get a big service over there. No service gonna be over there. We're gonna have only viewing on Saturday. And I understand people talking about parking, but I see so many parking on my place
But
over there.
it's
I don't do
okay.
anything. But the only thing that when I have the business there, then they're gonna be able to park there anymore.
Of course not,
I know
because
there's
you're gonna have,
problem with it.
I hope that you will have a guard or a security guard or a person. And I hear the concern of my colleagues about this being the art district and all of that, but I've been hearing it for a long time, okay?
Yes.
And I'd rather have a viable business in there than a closed building.
That's right.
Some of the other businesses that we've allowed has not really looked, or it creates that atmosphere of being a dead space, and that's not something that I would like to see. I was thinking back in August, I was not leaning toward it, but I had the opportunity to really look, and then I hear everyone, but yet here are the individuals complaining, but they're the one taking advantage. And that's all I've got to say. With that being said, will
And,
anyone?
and also, if I'm gonna get a big service, there's a church at Miami Shores, 100th Street. That's the church I'm using.
Okay,
I don't use a big service over there.
so
Thank you.
how do we write this in, Mr. Cook?
You talking about the condition you spoke
Yes.
of, ma'am, having big services not held at that location. We can just add it as a condition, ma'am, if you will.
Yeah,
Well,
but
we'd have to
Mr.
define big.
But Madam Chair,
Yes,
Madam,
ma'am.
Madam, Madam.
No, you cannot.
Madam
So-
Chair, two things. Number one, both the times on Saturday and Sunday when I went by, the cul-de-sac was filled with cars. There were no cars on that site, on the funeral home site, both on, at least the Saturday and Sunday I went by. And secondly, we've had this problem in the city for a while. We put in particular items in our recommendations. Who monitors them?
And I hear, I hear you,
you know, you
Mr.
can
McDermott,
say that, but there's been a lot of times when we've put things in, and then there's always the questions of the fact of, are they monitored?
But that small funeral home, that's easy to pick up. Our police department can tell us whether or not they've had issues, okay? No, but they can tell us, because
Yeah.
that was the condition that we did. We said, that other funeral home, and I know we're supposed to take things case by case, but that other funeral home has been in operation for some times. And I have not heard of any issues with that one based on the condition that was said.
Madam Chair, you just heard about one the other week. One of the ladies here stood up and talked about the fact that they had a large funeral home, and they had a very large funeral that shut down West Dixie Highway.
No, I'm
And-
not talking about that one on 151st.
No, I'm not talking about the one on 151st. I'm talking about the one that we had earlier. You know, so I think to say, well, you won't do this, I don't know, who's gonna monitor this stuff? That's, you know, that's the question, because we've had the lady talk to us about the funerals, and I've been on West
And-
Dixie Highway where I had to stop.
And I get it, I get it, I get it. It's not that I don't get it. My thing is, if we say we want businesses to come, and if those businesses show good faith and they abide by what we put in terms of requirement, why will we turn them away?
Madam Chair, if-
And I hear people say, well, there are 7, there are 8. I get that. We have it in our code where there are certain businesses that we went in and said we would not allow X number of this within X number of feet. But I don't think funeral homes were one.
So I'm trying to stick within the law
Okay. Madam
and
Ch-
not do it subjectively.
Okay. I would like to make a motion to deny this variance.
I second it.
Okay, roll call.
Just to clarify, it's a special exception, not a variance.
I'd like to make motion to deny this special exception.
I second it.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms.
go
Hill, seconded by Ms. Cohen. Okay.
Board Member Arnold, how do you vote
For it.
for the motion?
For the denial?
No, not for the denial, I'm sorry.
Because that's what we're voting on right now.
Against the denial.
Say it's a no.
It's a no.
Okay.
Board Member Cohen, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Hill, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member McDermott, how do you vote?
Yes.
Chairwoman Philippe, how do you vote?
No.
Motion passes 3-2.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the application has been denied.
No.
Excuse me.
From August,
the way it works.
Excuse me, the meeting has not been adjourned yet.
The meeting has not been adjourned.
Oh, it hasn't?
In a rush to go
I'm
home.
sorry. That's my concern.
Let me,
Okay.
I
That's
wasn't
not cool.
here.
Any old business? I see none. New business? Okay. Adjournment?
Second?
I can't
Motion.
say it.
Oh,
I can't
motion.
make the
Motion to adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
motion by Ms. Cohen and seconded by Ms. Hill. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, guys.
So as a side note, for the next meeting, we should have 3 to 4 items on the agenda.
You what?
For December 19th.